March 2001. The internet is young, slow, and largely innocent, but on a quiet corner of an Angelfire blog, a story appears that lights the fuse for a new era of horror. It unfolds through a series of diary updates from a hobbyist caver named Ted. He describes a narrow passage in a cave, a place he calls Floyd's tomb. At first, the entries are dry. Measurements, geology, equipment logs, just text on a web page and grainy photos of rock walls. But then, the tone shifts. Ted describes strange noises echoing in the dark. Inhuman screams. The air turns rancid with the smell of death. On one excursion, their climbing rope is pulled back into the void by an unseen hand. Readers keep refreshing the page, unsure if they are following a rescue mission or a hoax. The story ends abruptly. Ted promises one final update after a return trip. Ted the Caviar was fiction, but it blurred the lines between fact and fantasy so effectively that it created the blueprint for a new brand of horror. We stopped telling ghost stories around campfires and started passing digital ghosts through fiber optic cables. Years later, we would give these stories a name, Creepy. To understand the monster, we must look at its origins. Long before Reddit or YouTube, there was the dark age of the internet. The web was a patchwork of Usenet groups, a decentralized bulletin board system. While academics debated research, horror carved out its own tomb in groups like Alt, Horror, Creative. That update never comes. This was the proto-breeding ground. It was chaotic, unmoderated, and anonymous. Instead of one person telling a tale, it was 50. Writers posted rough drafts, and strangers piled on with edits, additions, and arguments about what really happened. The story evolved in real time. One of the first legends to feel truly new emerged from Abilene, Texas. In 1996, journalist Brian Bethel is sitting in his car outside a strip mall. He is writing a check to pay a bill when two children knock on his window. They ask for a ride to see a movie. It seems innocent enough until Bethel notices the details. The movie they want to see finished an hour ago. The late 2000s, the internet was no longer just a place to share stories. It was looking for a mascot. In 2008, it found one, not in a well-written novel, but in a single terrifying JPEG. Jeff the Killer. The story was crude teenage melodrama about a bullied boy who snaps, burns his eyelids off, and carves a smile into his cheeks. Critics mocked the writing, but the image was immortal. Jeff became the genre's first true bogeyman. He wasn't a ghost in a cave. He was a face in your window. He proved that in the digital age, a striking visual could override a weak script. He didn't just scare you. He demanded you look at him. Go to sleep, he whispered, but the internet stayed awake. Jeff opened the door for a new kind of terror, the cursed image. Enter Smile.jpg, the story of a husky dog with human teeth and a blood-red grin. Unlike traditional horror, this wasn't about a monster hunting you. It was about a file hunting you. The legend said that viewing the original file would drive you to insanity. The only way to save yourself: spread the image, email it to a friend, post it on a forum. It was the digital evolution of the chain letter. Pass this on or die. It turned the viewer into the vector, spreading the infection to save their own skin. While images shocked the eyes, other authors attacked the mind. Chris Straub writes, Cove? It wasn't a story about a killer. It was a forum thread. Strangers reminiscing about a bizarre children's show from the 1970s. They remembered the pirate ship, the laughingstock. They remembered the villain, the skin taker. But as the thread continued, the memories darkened. The show was nothing but 30 minutes of puppets screaming. And then, the twist. The show never existed. It was just static. Cove. Weaponized nostalgia. It made us question our own childhood memories. It bited the lost media subgenre, tapping into the fear that something rot was hiding inside the innocence of the past. The stories were getting diverse. We had the killer teen, the cursed file, the false memory. Now, we needed a monster. On 4chan's X board, users began documenting sightings of a creature. Pale, hairless, humanoid, but wrong. Captivated the rake. Unlike Jeff, the rake felt biological, animalistic. It sat at the foot of your bed while you slept. The collaborative nature of the web made it feel real sittings in rural America. Historical references in old journals. It was the internet's attempt to build a new cryptid from scratch, but the true king was yet to arrive. June 10th, 2009. The Something Awful forums. A user named Victor Surge enters a Photoshop contest. He posts 2 black and white photos of children playing, but in the background, almost blending into the trees, stands a figure. Tall, suited, faceless. The caption read, "We didn't want to go. We didn't want to kill them." But its persistent silence and outstretched arms horrified and comforted us at the same time. This was the birth of the Slender Man. Lightning struck. This wasn't just a story. It was an open-source myth. Victor Surge didn't copyright the monster. He let the internet play with it. Within days, the myth jumped from text to video. A YouTube channel called Marble Hornets began uploading tapes. No budget, no special effects. Just audio distortion, static, and the paranoia of being watched. It was a Blair Witch project for the YouTube generation. It proved that Slender Man could exist anywhere. In your photos, in your videos, in your mind. By the end of 2009, the golden age was in full swing. We had our icons, we had our format, but as the genre exploded in popularity, the lines between fiction and reality were about to blur dangerously. The darkness was leaking out of the screen. By 2012, Creepypasta wasn't just something you read, it was something you heard. A new wave of creators emerged. The Narrators. Channels like Mr. Creepypasta and Creepsmcpasta took these silent text files and gave them a voice. They brought the digital campfire to life, often recording under blankets in the dead of night, whispering local legends directly into your earbuds. And they had a soundtrack. A composer named Yugi released hundreds of dark, royalty-free piano tracks. His music became the unofficial heartbeat of the entire internet horror community. You couldn't hear those opening notes without feeling a Pavlovian response of dread. The genre was maturing. It was moving from amateur forums to professional production. Hollywood started paying attention. These weren't just silly internet stories anymore. They were valuable intellectual property. Stories like Borosco Sprawling, multi-part epic about a town harboring a horrific secret in its mind's war, adapted into high-budget audio dramas starring major actors. Television followed. The sci-fi channel's Channel Zero proved that you could take a minimalist concept like Cove and expand it into sophisticated psychological horror. The creators were finally getting a seat at the table. Creepypasta had gone mainstream. It was the peak of the golden age. But with visibility came volatility. The higher you climb, the harder you fall. May 31st, 2014. Waukesha, Wisconsin. The boundary between the screen and reality shattered. 2 12-year-old girls lured their best friend into the woods for a game of hide-and-seek. Then, they attacked her, stabbed her 19 times. Miraculously, the victim survived. When police questioned the attackers, their motive was chilling. They weren't angry. They weren't fighting. They were trying to prove themselves. They believed Slender Man was real. They believed that by sacrificing their friend, they would become his proxies. His servants and be allowed to live in his mansion in the woods. This was the dark side of the open source myth. When thousands of people collectively pretend something is real, for some, the pretense fades away. The attackers were later found to be suffering from undiagnosed mental illness, a condition fans darkly referred to as the Slender Sickness. It was a tragic, self-fulfilling prophecy. The internet had conjured a monster, and 2 vulnerable children took it literally. The reaction was immediate. A moral panic swept the media. Parents were warned about the dangers lurking on wiki pages. The community itself was horrified. Narrators held fundraisers for the victim. Creators issued statements distancing themselves from the violence. But the damage was done. If you look at the Google Trends graph for Creepypasta, the peak is right there. June 2014, the moment the news broke. After that, a long, slow decline. And it wasn't an isolated incident. Just a year later, another 12-year-old girl in Indiana killed her stepmother. She claimed she was obeying the commands of Laughing Jack, another popular creepypasta character. For many, the fun was over. The spooky Campfire tailies weren't innocent anymore. They had a body count. The golden age had ended in blood, and the genre was left to wander in the wilderness, looking for a new identity. By 2018, the corpse of the genre was cold, but Hollywood decided to dig it up one last time. The Slender Man movie was released. It should have been a triumph. Instead, it was an insult. Released 4 years after the stabbing tragedy, it ignored the rich lore built by the community. It ignored Marble Hornets. It ignored the psychological terror. Instead, it delivered cheap jump scares and teenage drama. It felt like a cash grab on a gravestone. Critics tore it apart. Fans hated Italiano. It was a tasteless, undercooked serving of stale creepypasta. The movie didn't kill Slender Man. It proved that he was already dead. The era of the viral ghost story was officially over. But horror hates a vacuum. As the text-based stories faded, the audience migrated. They didn't want to read anymore. They wanted to watch. Out of the ruins of found footage rose a new, bizarre, analog horror. Series like Locale 58 and the Mandela Catalogue traded the shaky handheld cameras for the static of VHS tapes and public access television. They mimicked the aesthetics of safety, emergency broadcasts, instructional videos, cartoons. But hidden within the scan lines was a message. Do not look at the moon. There are intruders in your home. It was the spiritual successor to Creepy. It kept the ambiguity, but replaced the campfire with a cathode ray tube. While some looked to the past, others looked to order. If Creepypasta was the chaotic Wild West, the SCP Foundation was the government crackdown. Starting as a single post about a concrete statue that moves when you do UNT look at it. SCP 173, it exploded into a massive collaborative writing project. Secure, contain, protect. The format shifted from campfire tailies to clinical, scientific reports. Thousands of entries, a shared universe. Peer-reviewed quality control. It was horror bureau. It reflected the modern fear, not of monsters in the woods, but of a world so dangerous that it needs to be catalogued, numbered, and locked away in a cage. So, where does that leave us? The golden age is gone. You won't find a new Jeff the Killer on 4chan today. The viral innocence of 2010 is lost, buried under algorithms and skepticism. But the spirit remains. We saw it in the Backrooms, millions of people, terrified of endless yellow wallpaper. We see it in Tenosli's subreddit, where the rule is everything is true. Creepypasta was a flash in the pan. A specific cultural moment where we were just naive enough to believe the internet could be haunted. It brought us back to the oldest tradition of our species, sitting in the dark, whispering to each other, trying to make sense of the shadows. The fire has faded. The storytellers have moved on, but the monsters they created, they never really left. They're still out there, waiting for you to blink.